This is the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast, where we unpack fantasy, faith, and life. I'm Bryce Johnson with Pastor Trip Smith, and we are your fantasy coaches here to encourage you and help you win while you play fantasy football with purpose. As we provide fantasy advice, we won't always be right, but we hope we'll be convincing. We are coming to you live from the Unpacking It Ministry studio just outside of Charlotte, North Carolina in downtown Mount Holly on this rainy Tuesday afternoon. But the Panthers won on Sunday, so we're feeling good. I'm wearing my ugly Christmas Panther sweater. Man, I got a killer deal on this. I think it was like $15. It's tremendous. So it's nice and cozy. The sleeves couldn't be any longer though. So I'm swimming in the sleeves, but you got like little fingers sliding out there. But nonetheless, we are glad to be here and so much to talk about in this final week of the fantasy regular season. And so we will do fantasy shenanigans, accountability and confession. Would you rather? We've even got a couple names popping up on the waiver wire where we're going to have to ask, wait, who is that? The breakout today is about trust. This time of year, it is all about the players you can trust. Who do you trust? Who do you trust the most to be in your lineup for the final week of the regular season, for week one of the fantasy playoffs? And if you've been listening to us all year, it would be our hope and expectation that your team is in the playoffs. Now, yes, if you play in enough leagues, there's probably that one league where you've had bad luck. Guilty. Well, for the most part, we're feeling good. Trip's feeling good about his teams. I'm feeling good about my teams. So hopefully you followed along. You've got some of the same players as we do, and you're feeling good about where your team is at. A couple injuries from the weekend that we'll get into, but for the most part, we're getting overall healthy. A lot of players are coming back. I just got news. Omarion Hampton looks like he's going to play this week. So what are the ramifications for that? So we got a fun show. But let's say hello to Trip. Trip, how you doing, man?
Hey, Bryce. Good to be with you, brother. Man, can I paint a little picture for you? I want you to just imagine me this past Thursday visiting some family. We're fortunate to have some family who have a historic home up in the mountains that was they're kind of fixing it up. They're renovating as a little run down, but they've got this beautiful old home that they're fixing up slowly. Big brick fireplace, huge open front, and we roll up in there for Thanksgiving. This isn't family that we see super often, and man, they just had a fire was blazing.
Ooh.
It was the tail end of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade.
Nice.
Getting ready for that first football game at 1:00. Just got to sit there by the fire, holding our little baby, and just watch about the first quarter and a half of that first football game next to the fire, and it was a great start to football this week for me. And then the Panthers with a nice sort of exclamation point on Sunday.
Yes.
Last week we were talking about the Rams possibly being the best football team in the NFL. The Panthers beat them. Therefore, the Panthers are the best team in the NFL, which is something that you and I have been saying all season long, of course, that Bryce Young is definitely a good quarterback and the Panthers are the real deal. And so, yeah, it was a fun weekend of football, man.
Man, well, let's start there because that is as much shenanigans as we'll find. So here we go.
Fantasy Shenanigans.
All right, so here on the show, we start things off with just some of the news, the reaction, the craziness, all the shenanigans in fantasy football. And so let's start with the Rams and the Panthers and sort of moving forward. And really, the shenanigans are the fact that in week 13, no teams are on a bye because of Thanksgiving. 3 games that day, the Friday game, which is nice. So I like that in the schedule. But then you follow that up with week 14, and now we got a number of teams on a late bye, including the Panthers, the Patriots, the Niners, a couple other teams as well. But so the Panthers get the momentum from the big win. We see Bryce Young play well, Tedero McMillan. Really the surprise of the day, or the pleasant surprise, was Jalen Coker, who looked tremendous.
Yeah, he looked great.
We've been waiting on him. There was a lot of hype for him coming into the season. He got injured. That ruined the hype. So what do we do with him moving forward? And then the return of Chuba Hubbard to a key role. So what does that mean for Rico Dowdle? What does that mean for the Panthers moving forward? Obviously, we're talking now fantasy playoffs because they will be off this week. And then with the Rams, Blake Corum played a ton. He looked good. He continues to look good. Kyron got banged up, and then he came back. And then Devontae Adams. I've said it all season, but this is I think my first experience with Devontae. This guy is tremendous.
Yeah.
He's the goal line back, as they say. He's the wide receiver that catches all the goal line passes. So anyway, have what you want with the shenanigans.
He's just such an experienced, savvy wide receiver, so I think it's clear he's lost a small step athletically. It's not like he's over the hill by any means, but he's on the, he's on the back end of his career. He's lost a small step athletically, but he's just such a tactical wide receiver in the green zone there. I heard a stat this morning that he, since this stat was tracked, he has the most targets of a wide receiver for a team inside the 10-yard line since that stat was tracked sometime in like the 80s or something like that. And we're only in week, 13, right? So it's like he has already broken the record for total targets. So if you wanted to make the bear case about the Rams, it would be that Devontae Adams hasn't done a ton outside of the red zone. Kyron Williams looked like he's wearing down, and Matthew Stafford slowly. I don't know if you saw a couple of turnovers he had where he took some hits there, or just there were a few sacks that were. If Matthew Stafford starts to break down a little physically, which it doesn't look like that's been going on, but if you wanted to make the concerned case for the Rams heading into the fantasy playoffs and for the end of the real NFL season, I think it would be Kyron wearing down, Stafford wearing down, Devontae Adams not being the same sort of athletic kind of receiver between the 20s that he used to be. And so that whole offense kind of having to funnel through Puka. You're right. Blake Corum has looked great. He has looked better than Kyron Williams. But I do think a game like that has got to, there got to be some sort of minor alarms going off for Rams fans. And if you own one of those fantasy players, I think you're still feeling good. If the Panthers going into that game, if you're thinking, how do we beat the Rams? It's we run the ball 40 times, and we get a few turnovers. We got to figure out how to turn Matthew Stafford over a few times. And that's exactly what they did. And they were able to win the game. So I still think that Rico got one more carry than Chuba, if I'm not mistaken. It was 18 for Rico, 17 for Chuba. The big concern is with this bye, and then for most of us, the first week of the playoffs immediately following the bye, can you trust Chuba Hubbard? I don't think that you can.
I think you can.
Man,
maybe as a flex. I think in a flex.
Obviously,
spot.
if you're counting on Chuba as like your second running back, which we were talking about him as a sleeper coming into the season, so it's possible that some people were. You're probably just eking into the playoffs anyway. But man, I'd feel nervous about starting Chuba. Honestly, I'd feel a little bit nervous about starting Rico. He's a guy who got me through a difficult middle portion of the season on a couple different teams, and he's cooled off significantly. And now it looks like it might be a real committee there.
Both flex.
Yeah,
guys.
You want those guys in your flex. Yeah. And then I would also just say, like Jalen Coker, you're excited about the performance that you got from him this week, probably while he was on your bench. It would be so scary to start him with any confidence. So it's just weird having this week 14 bye and asking yourself, which of these Panthers can I trust? I think Bryce Young had his highest passer rating of his career, but even in like 2 QB leagues, you're nervous if you're starting him as your second quarterback, so it's a weird situation, man. I would have never in 1,000 years thought that the Panthers would win that game. Even at home, even in the rain, you just never would have expected them to win that. And now it puts you in an awkward situation from a fantasy perspective if you're counting on some of those Panthers or even some of those Rams players heading into the playoffs.
Yeah, now you have the question, do you hold Bryce Young through the bye? Do you hold Jalen Coker through the bye? If you're fighting for a final roster or a playoff spot and every roster position matters, it's tricky. And I like Chuba. I like Chuba down the stretch for the Panthers. I think he's a little more rested, hopefully, healthy.
That's sneaky. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I like your perspective there.
We know that he's been there, done that. And I don't know. I've got a certain level of trust, which we're going to talk about in a little bit more. But so that there's the one guy that I can actually trust on this team because I've seen it before. Whereas, as good as Rico was, I haven't seen him down the stretch in a season. He hasn't won me a fantasy champ. I guess last year he was pretty good for Dallas.
Yeah, he finished the year pretty strong with Dallas last year. So I think that he's a good running back, but it just seems like if they had their druthers, if Canales did what he wanted to do, it would be close to 50-50 split where both of them are playing pretty well. That's a recipe for success for the Panthers. It may not be a recipe for success in fantasy. You know, you mentioned Amari and Hampton coming back, but it looks like maybe Justin Herbert is not going to be playing in this game. You know,
the Chargers are like the Panthers, where you just have no idea what you're going to get from them. We've seen really high highs and really low lows, and they've had a lot of injuries, of course.
What do you do if Hampton comes out this week and scores 9 points? Kamani Vidal gets 8 carries, let's say, without Justin Herbert, and then you're heading into the first week of the playoffs. Herbert comes back. Can you trust Hampton? I mean, it would be so hard to trust him. You probably don't have a better option than to roll him into your lineup. But man, this is what we talked about last week, and it continues to be true. There are just these uncertain situations that you don't feel good about it which is why it's great if you're in one of these leagues where 6 teams make the playoffs. I know you play a lot of 8-team playoff leagues.
I want 8 out of 14. Those
I
are
really
the
like 6. I like having a reward for the first and second place team where they get a bye for the first week of the playoffs. Get a little bit of the.
I want to keep playing.
You want to keep playing?
I want to keep playing.
I like the you've got something to fight for to get into one of those top spots, because that week 15 bye can be vital. It can be so helpful for situations like this where you're just trying to figure out, and it's just easier to, I got to put 2 strong weeks together than 3 strong weeks together. But I admire your manliness and your courage there to just go in, like 8 teams make the playoffs. We're just going for it, you know.
You got to wait, because that 8th guy can sometimes the hottest team, and he comes in and knocks off.
It is fun when one of those,
the 1-8 matchup. I love it in week 15. So as far as the Chargers go, I'm absolutely putting Amari and Hampton in my starting lineup. He is on 2 of my teams. He will be in the starting lineup. I will think long and hard about also keeping Kamani Vidal in as well. And in some leagues, I've got both. But I think that he's shown, I mean, the week that he just had was tremendous. So for them to just move on from Vidal, where Hampton hasn't played all season, I think is tough. But we saw enough from Hampton earlier in the year that he's a plug-and-play stud running back. And even with a few touches, he can make a lot of noise with those touches. And so I think the Chargers need him. I think especially with Herbert banged up. So he's either playing with an injury or Trey Lance is out there. Those are the options. They're going to rely on the run game. And so to me, there will be enough. We know Harbaugh, he'll run it all day if he has to. And so if you got two good running backs, we've seen them both. It's awesome. So I was chuckling to myself yesterday. I was like walking to the bathroom thinking about Kamani Vidal and what a great season he's had.
Mm-hmm.
And last year I was all about him and he let me down.
Yeah.
But sometimes patience. We got to be patient with these guys. And you know what I started thinking about? There are rookie running backs this year that have burned you, or that you just like, I don't know. And next year they're going to be studs. And we can't forget about them. So now is the time in the year where you're like, hey, take a look at some of these rookie running backs. And it might not help you this year, but next year, don't forget them.
Well, that is a great reminder. Just even if you're out of the playoffs, even if you're out of the championship hunt in your league, you got to pay attention to what happens in the real NFL from like weeks 15 to 18, because it does have implications for next year. I mean, I think Kamani Vidal has earned himself a role. My worry is that he probably has earned the trust of Jim Harbaugh and the Chargers. And so he may kind of slot into like this long-term Tyler Algier situation where he's a running back that they love to have as a backup. And on any given week, he might score a touchdown. And I've got leagues where I've been starting Tyler Algier because he seems to score a touchdown 50% of the time. You know, Bijan owners are like, Bijan should be getting those touchdowns. He should be getting the 2 to 3 touchdowns a game that they have opportunity for. But I think that's probably the situation for Kimani long-term. And so he's a guy that will get drafted next year. But barring kind of Hampton having another injury, you're probably, starting him with a lot of trepidation next season.
All right. So the one other thing I wanted to note, I read this today, the fantasy points over the last 4 weeks are way down.
Yeah.
It's very interesting. And I'm not sure that there's an answer for it. Maybe defenses are just playing better, or weather was a little bit of a factor this week. I think scheduling sometimes factors into some of the poor performances as well. I think the Rams traveling to Charlotte, that's always a tough thing. You're used to playing indoors, you play outside, 1:00 game. So some of that factors in too. But it's just interesting, as fantasy managers, we haven't necessarily had the huge performances from a lot of guys in recent weeks. So touchdowns are down. So will we then see that trend continue, or are we sort of prepared now for the floodgates to open and we start seeing some more scoring in the end of at the end of the season.
Yeah,
that's gonna be intriguing.
I've noticed those lower. So I'm in a lot of these leagues where you play a game against the median.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a great way to track what is happening across the fantasy landscape, because it's like earlier this season, to beat the median, you're probably going to have to score about 110 to 115 points in a lot of the leagues that I'm in. And it's been like in the low 100s to like mid 90s the last few weeks. So it's been a much lower median score. I sort of suspect that that's because some of these offenses that we expect to be prolific have really slowed down. I'm thinking of the Ravens. I'm thinking about the Philadelphia Eagles.
Even the Bills. I mean, the Bills are hot and cold.
A little bit. They're hot and cold.
Yeah.
The Chiefs are kind of winning these messy sort of defensive slugfests more
Even
than
though Mahomes is having such a good year.
Mahomes is having a great year, which is great.
They're hard to figure out,
I think it's because he's having to run a lot, But so in general, I would say you would probably expect sort of a positive regression to the mean over the next 4 weeks, but it is some of these teams that we expected to be more offensively powerful have struggled the last few weeks. And again, that's not a situation that you want heading into your fantasy playoffs, counting on Lamar Jackson, counting on Zay Flowers, who scored negative points this past week, counting on some of these.
Can you really bench Lamar, though?
You can't bench Lamar. That's exactly right. You have to keep playing him. You got to keep playing Saquon Barkley. You're probably not benching Zay Flowers, but it's just.
You probably bench Zay.
Zay's had, Zay, similar to guys like who else did I put down here? I mean, it's like Zay Flower, like Jamison Williams, Rashee Rice. It's like they have these weeks where they score 0 points, 4 points, and then the next week they score 22. And so you've just got to have them in your starting lineup. You can't take them out. But Zay has been much more inconsistent. I'm concerned about the Ravens offense across the board. As a guy who invested in Derrick Henry early in the season, thinking that he was going to turn things around, I'm worried that it could be a rough run here for the Ravens at the end of the season.
Let's hold that thought and let's go to our accountability and confession, because I want to talk more about the Ravens. Here we go.
Pardon me, Mr. Perfect. I guess I forgot that you never ever make a mistake.
Just when I think you couldn't possibly be any dumber, you go and do something like this and totally redeem yourself.
I am the smartest man alive.
So a couple weeks ago, I did a hot take on Keaton Mitchell. I was all excited about Keaton Mitchell and from the Baltimore Ravens, the third string running back behind Justice Hill and Derrick Henry. And I remember a couple seasons ago, as a rookie, he was phenomenal, especially at the end of the season, electric. And so I remembered that. I go, all right, I kept waiting for him. Last year, he just never came back. Injuries got him.
He missed the whole season, basically.
Yeah. So he just never happened. And then this season, it was like a little bit. We heard some rumblings like, okay, he's making his way back. And then we got it on Saturday, whatever night it was, Thanksgiving night. He got into the end zone and played great. So I'm going to pat myself on the back. However, I picked him up in I think all my leagues a couple weeks ago. I had to drop him. I did have to drop him in one league based on a roster change. And so I'm disappointed by that move because he did come through. Now, Justice Hill is out. You mentioned Derrick Henry, just not playing like Derrick Henry. They need a spark on that offense, and it's going to continue to be Keaton Mitchell. And I think he's worth a flex consideration. I really do, moving forward. So they need him, and we might need him on our fantasy team. So hopefully you listen and pick them up.
I love that he could be a sneaky guy who, I'm not going to say that he's going to win you your fantasy championship.
Probably
but
not.
He could be a guy who, in desperation, you slot him in. And what happens whenever Keaton Mitchell touches the ball is that he could go for a 40-yard touchdown on kind of a sweep run. I mean, I saw this stat about him a few weeks ago. I don't know if this is still true, but at one point about 2 weeks ago, he had the highest yards per carry of any player in their first 75 carries or something like that in their career, right? Because just at any moment he could break out for this explosive play. So it's always going to be a question of, does he get the opportunity? And it seems like with the Justice Hill injury, with Henry looking a little bit older, with Lamar being hurt, you could see him being one of these guys that the Ravens have to utilize more than they've been using him. So I like that call. Yeah, he could be a sneaky kind of flex play for playoffs. Yeah,
5.8 yards per carry.
He's incredible. Yeah,
Whew.
he's a little bit undersized, but he's so dynamic. He went to ECU, I'm paying attention. He was a fun guy, even when he was at ECU, to pay attention to. And he's an exciting player who you just throw him into your lineup and you hope he breaks a 40-yard kind of touchdown, which could change your week in a single play. So yeah, that's a good one. I like that call.
So the other player that I've got to both celebrate and confess is Kyle Monangai. I've been talking about him all season. I've had him on my teams, but I still have yet to have the courage to start him consistently.
Oh, come on, man.
So I missed out on the 25-point game on Friday, Black Friday. But good for Monangai. And I do think it's going to continue.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know about 25 points, but I think Monangai he's trusted with the Bears. This is a 1-2 punch in Chicago. Swift was great too. There's room for both. Now, I don't know why the Eagles stink at stopping the run there, but that was impressive for the Bears. So
yeah,
I'm in on that. I'm in on that moving forward.
Yeah, I just think Ben Johnson is just a great coach, and he knows what it takes, especially offensively, to beat the team that's across the kind of line from them. And the Bears are super interesting and super
the number one team in the NFC.
Yeah, that's right, man.
Are you kidding me?
And so I think you got to put Monangai in your starting lineup until further notice. And the same is true for DeAndre Swift.
Yeah.
Who knows which receiver? I mean, Odunze has totally disappeared. Who knows which receiver or pass catcher for them is going to be playable on any given week? But those two running backs, I think you can start both of them going forward and feel pretty good about it. Yeah.
I do. I read a lot of fantasy information. There's this push for Luther Burden.
Right.
And I'm just not sure that I don't know. We haven't fully seen it yet. We've had moments. He's getting more touches or catches and attention and all that kind of thing. But the production isn't there enough for me to trust him in any lineups.
It's the mystique of the unknown, right? Like we've seen DJ Moore put up these stinkers of week, having less than 5 points multiple weeks in a row. And we've seen Odunze do that. And so of course people are going to say, yeah, well, Luther Burden would be better than both of those guys. And the truth is, no, he wouldn't. On any given week, it could be any of those receivers. Colson Loveland's probably the only pass catcher that you're starting with confidence for the Bears going forward. I know he didn't have a great week, but I just think in terms of tight ends and what you need from a tight end to be competitive, he's probably at least going to get you a few catches and maybe 40, 60 yards. You're hoping maybe he catches a touchdown, but figuring out what's going on with their passing offense is really hard.
I'd rather avoid that.
Their running offense, I think you can have actually surprisingly a high degree of confidence in going forward, which is weird to say.
Absolutely. No, what Ben Johnson has done has been tremendous. So they're ahead of schedule. They've done a great job. He's exceeded all my expectations. Now, he probably can keep his shirt on. I don't know if he needs to take his shirt off in the locker room. I don't know if you saw that.
I saw that.
Big celebration.
Yeah.
Hey, keep the shirt on.
There's a few NFL coaches
you're doing
that
a great job. Just keep the shirt on.
There's a few NFL coaches that are pretty jacked. Ben Johnson's not quite there where he needs to be on video with his shirt off. But he has been getting a lot of notoriety for his post-game speeches this year, So I think he just had, what am I going to do to top my most recent speech? I'll take my shirt off, So whatever. He definitely is a player's coach. The players love him. The Chicago Bears believe that they are a contender, and he has them believing that. So, I mean, I can't fault the guy for his coaching style, I don't think.
Coaching is, we know it's huge in college football. We just saw, Lane Kiffin making all the money, and it's all about coaches in college football. I feel like in the NFL, it's underrated how important coaches are. I mean, they can really make a difference. I mean, I think what Dave Canales is doing in Carolina,
right. Yeah.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
And, you see the consistency of guys like Sean McVay and, you go on and on, but, and then there are times where coaches, it's time to move on. And sadly, Pittsburgh, it's time to move on. And so
I was going to ask you about that whole situation.
Speaking of that, I have been in on the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, and fantasy wise, DK Metcalf on a number of leagues. I was wrong. I whiffed on Metcalf. He's so talented. Talk about taking your shirt off. The guy's a stud, but it doesn't translate. Not this year, not in Pittsburgh. So I'm sorry for misleading all of us with DK Metcalf. I think he's got to be benched. I don't feel good even having him in my lineup.
You're probably right. I mean, you're probably right. Maybe in a flex, if you're in one of these 2 flex leagues, you throw him in there in your very last spot and hope for a home run play. The question I think that the Steelers are better with Mason Rudolph than they are with Aaron Rodgers. I really believe that. And I think that there's evidence to support that, especially if Rodgers is not at 100%. Yeah. He started the season off so well, but as he has gotten physically worn down, as the weather has gotten colder, I think if they want to win, Rudolph should be the starter. You can't do that with Rodgers on your roster because it would be an absolute media circus. But Mike Tomlin is in an untenable situation. He's going to have his first below 500 season ever in the year that they went out and got Aaron Rodgers to be their starting quarterback. And I would say if Rodgers, hurts his wrist again or misses a game, I would start DK Metcalf with more confidence if Rudolph was the quarterback. And I think that bore itself out the 2 weeks that we got to see Mason Rudolph. But yeah, it's just a tough situation. As someone who, wants to see Jaylen Warren succeed, who thought maybe there was going to be some sneaky playoff value with Kenneth Gainwell, I just don't know that you can start any skill player on that Steelers offense with any confidence. It's a bad situation for them. And as Tomlin, who I think is a good NFL coach and has this track record of just always taking bad situations and getting the best that he can get out of them, it just keeps the Steelers stuck in this sort of around 500 purgatory where they can't really solve any of their problems, most notably the quarterback problem that they've had since Ben Roethlisberger retired.
Oh, yeah.
It has been an ongoing problem for them. But yeah, you're right about Metcalf, man. One more, if we have time for one more, I just want to ask you what you think about how you feel about Chris Olave. Chris Olave is a receiver that I was high on coming in this season. He's had a good kind of second half of the season here. He's catching touchdowns. He also dropped an egregious pass that potentially could have had the Saints in that game towards the end of the game. And now we see Devon Vele coming on as what looks like maybe Tyler Shuck's favorite target, which is weird. But Vele's a guy that we saw in flashes last year. How do you feel if you've got Chris Olave as, let's say, like your third wide? You probably don't feel good if he's your second
I think
receiver.
He's been a top 10 wide receiver this year.
Has he?
Yeah.
Has he been that? Okay,
no,
this is like my
had
Drake London moment where has he been better than I thought that he?
Yeah.
Tell me what you think about Chris Olave.
So Chris Olave is the 11th points per game
to me, man.
15.
You're right. He's 10th in PPR. And okay, wow.
Yeah.
I take back what I said. How do you feel about Chris Olave if he's your second wide receiver going into the playoffs?
You're feeling okay, because the thing with the Saints, and normally I don't love the teams that are out of the playoff hunt down the stretch, like the star players. Sometimes the rookies or the younger guys that finally get their opportunity on bad teams at the end of the year, those are the players you want on your fantasy teams. But with the Saints, I think they're trying to build momentum. They're trying to, Kellen Moore is implementing his offense, and there are moments where, man, this is really good. They had a chance to win against Miami on Sunday. Kind of a silly final play, but Shook has been okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that, he's our franchise guy yet, but I'm going to most likely be starting Devin Neal, the running back, in a number of leagues. And then I like Chris Olave. I like Juwan Johnson. So I think they're going to be okay down the stretch. So,
yeah.
But I understand your concerns for Olave. They're there, but he's been productive. Whereas I don't really want any Titans players. They stink.
He's going to be a guy. It's going to be interesting to see where he gets drafted next year.
Olave will be a target of mine. He'll be a steal because, to your point,
right?
Your perception of him is not very good, and then you look at the numbers and you go, "Oh wait, he's actually pretty good." And people will be in that same boat, and we'll target him next year because the Saints will be better. Because I think Kellen Moore is a good coach.
I bailed on Olave too soon. I didn't realize that he was the 10th wide receiver this year. I traded him away in a dynasty league.
Oh.
I hate that. I wish I didn't know. I wish I hadn't gone and checked that.
I wish you would have talked to me. Come on. So last thing for our accountability and confession, we've been talking about players since July. Trip and I participate in multiple fantasy leagues, and you've been loyally listening to the show and listening to some of our advice. And like we always say, we're not always right, but we hope to be convincing. We've gotten plenty right this year, plenty wrong, but I want to hold myself accountable to let you know where I stand with my leagues heading into the final week of the regular season. I am in first place. I am in second place. I am in sixth place. And one of my teams, I do not want to talk about anymore. They have been eliminated from the playoffs. So those are the 4 teams I manage. So overall, very solid season. I'm not sure that any of these teams are a championship team because I don't necessarily, I don't have CMC. He's most likely, if he's healthy, going to win a lot of leagues. Jonathan Taylor, if he actually starts playing like he used to with the Colts, you were all over that one. Colts, with this tough schedule, have been struggling. You need a guy like that that's going to really carry you. So anyway, some of my teams, I don't know who that guy is. I just have solid, steady teams that have produced well. So except for that one team that has just been an absolute disaster. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. Now I'm eliminated. put me out of my misery in that league.
There you go. You can just forget that one ever happened. Yeah, I
That's
will
right.
say it's great when you've got that team that just feels like a juggernaut heading into the playoffs. But like we always say, once you get into the playoffs, anything can happen. And so you just got to get in and then put the best roster that you can put there. And you can have a crazy 3-week stretch that wins you your championship. So that'll happen to you this year, Bryce. I'm feeling it for at least some of those teams.
Yeah. We'll have three teams making a run. So I will keep you posted on that. All right, let's jump into this week's breakout topic. And every week on the show, we take a fantasy concept. We relate it to the Bible. We relate it to our own lives. And this week's topic is, who do you trust more? And every week, we put together our starting lineup. And as we are making those decisions, it really comes down to, who do we trust more? Who are we going to put in our lineup that we trust more? And this is true all year long, but it gets heightened this time of year. The final week of the regular season. Then during the fantasy playoffs, we are weighing, okay, we're looking at the matchups. We're looking at, okay, what have they been doing in recent weeks? But when it comes down to it, it's like, who do I trust? Who do I trust more? And ultimately, it's nice to have those elite players we can trust and just leave in our lineup as a must start. And we don't have to worry about whether, they have a tough matchup, because they usually come through anyway. These are the players who don't give us any concerns, and they just remain starters on our team. And so, when we look at our roster, the main reason that we trust certain players over others is because they've proven to be faithful and worthy of trust. They've regularly exceeded their projected points. They've helped us win previously, and they just don't let us down. They're consistent and reliable, and we know what to expect. And so, Trip, as I describe trustworthy players, who are some of those players that come to mind that you've been able to trust this year?
That's a good question, man, because as I'm thinking about my own kind of playoff prospects with my teams, I feel like I'm having a pretty good season, but there's not one player that jumps out at me as just like a guy that has just been reliable for me all season long. I mean, what's crazy is that in 2 leagues, I'll say since week 6, the answer for me has been Jacoby Brissett. I don't know that I trust him, but every week he's scoring 20 points. And at this point, I'm like, I just got to trust this guy. The Cardinals are not good, but he's throwing for 300 yards every week. And he's just steady. He's just reliable, and so it's a weird answer, but I actually think that for a couple of my unexpectedly prosperous teams, Jacoby Brissett might be a guy who helped me turn it around in the early part of the season, and he's been steady for me. I think I'm ready to say I trust him.
I like it, and that's part of the process too. We have to get to that point where we go, wait, why aren't you trusting him? All he's done has been faithful and done a great job. Let's trust him. And you know who that's been for me is Tyler Warren.
Good one.
Just a revelation.
Just reliable.
What a guy this year.
Yeah.
He had the one little, even this week, he was a little sick and he still was fine. So he's been
just steady.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Been able to trust him. And I've trusted Drake May all year. And he's had a couple, just lower scoring games, but overall he's exceeded all expectations and has been a tremendous value. And so I trust him. I trust him down the stretch as well. And so as we think about, different fantasy players that we trust, we wish we had a full roster of those kind of guys. But the reality is that most players let us down at times. They're great for a week and then they're horrible the next. And most players are dealing with injuries that leave them questionable and then leaves us worried. Meanwhile, other players, they've ruined our season by being injured, or they've just been underachieving all year long. And so during the season, we get all excited about the players we just got off waivers, or maybe that backup running back we are using for the first time in our starting lineup, thinking that they will deliver. And then too often they underperform. They fall short of expectations or projections, and they actually contribute to our fantasy team losing. And so those are the tough situations. And then, usually though, the inevitable player like that disappoints us, we think that they could do something that really only the elite, trustworthy players can do. Mm-hmm. And we got a little distracted because we thought, this guy off the waiver wire, I'm going to put him in my lineup. It's like, no. who are the players I can really trust? Who are the guys that are going to come through when it really matters? And so, oftentimes we'll put our faith in the wrong players, and we'll continue to do that. And we just start players just because we want them to do well, but they're really not trustworthy. And so we got to be honest with ourselves as fantasy managers and ask, why do we continue to trust the wrong players to deliver? And we've got to admit that it's time to put our faith in someone new. And so if we already have players we can trust, let's be thankful for them. Let's lock them in our lineups and realize, all right, these are the ones I can trust. I can depend on the most. And so when it comes to our own lives, who do we trust the most? Where are we placing our faith? And are we putting our faith in the wrong things, the wrong people, sort of the backup running back we just picked up off the waiver wire, and we think that they're going to come in and deliver what they can't. They're not able to deliver that. For us as followers of Jesus, there is one that we can truly trust. And so do we believe that God is the only one that is truly trustworthy? And have, we placed our faith in Jesus or as our Lord and Savior? And do we continue to trust him more than anyone or anything else? And then we can ask the question too, why is God worthy to always be trusted? And if we parallel this back to sort of that fantasy player that we always trust, God is that lineup lock because he's faithful. He's consistent. He never changes. He does even more than we can dream of. And he always delivers on his promises. And so before I read the verses, how does this parallel resonate with you, Trip?
I mean, I love that you're always bringing us back to the epicenter of the gospel, the center of the bullseye, Bryce, which is have you put your trust in Jesus as the forgiver of your sins, as your savior, as the one who gives you righteousness. It's really important to say that before we start talking about day-to-day practical trust, that sort of that initial decision that brings us into reconciled relationship with God is absolutely critical to ask yourself, to ask the people that you care about in your life, is have you trusted Jesus as your savior from sin, your savior onto eternal life? And the great news about that decision is it's not the quality of our faith, it's not the strength of our trust that makes that salvation work for us. It's the object of our faith. It's the strength of our Savior. So it is really important before we jump into this very important conversation about trust and day-to-day practical trust to say, even if that faith in Jesus, it to be weak and wavering, which in reality is true for all of us, that our faith in Christ is often weak and wavering. We look to other functional saviors. Right. He is sufficient to save us, even when we doubt him and struggle with unbelief. So it's really important to say that before we jump into this. And I love that you start us off there. Have you looked to Jesus as your savior? If you have, your righteousness is irrevocable. You're reconciled to God in right relationship with him. And then that really puts you on the path of what does it look like to trust him day to day.
Absolutely. And so, yeah, I mean, the question is, who do I trust? Because am I trusting in Jesus, one, to be my savior? And then every day, who am I trusting? Because oftentimes, just like in fantasy, we start looking at, okay, what's the newest thing, the newest player? Let me figure out somebody else. And we realize, yeah, they're not trustworthy. Because anytime we put somebody into our lineup, we're still trusting them with that. And so day to day, are we trusting ourselves? We got to start there. Do I have more trust in myself and what I can do? And so am I trusting myself for salvation? We'll start there. But then day to day, am I trusting myself that, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. It's all up to me. Or am I fully surrendered to trust the one who lived the perfect life, who died on my behalf, who rose again, who offers me salvation? I'm going to trust him because he is faithful, because he does love me, because his grace is tremendous. And so let's look at a couple verses that speak to the faithfulness of God and just the reminder that he's worthy of our trust. And so in Lamentations 3:22-23, the faithful love of the Lord never ends. His mercy never ceases. Great is his faithfulness. His mercies begin afresh each morning. Ephesians 3:20. Now glory be to God, who by his mighty power at work within us is able to do far more than we would ever dare to ask or even dream of, infinitely beyond our highest prayers, desires, thoughts, or hopes. That's who we trust. The one with that kind of power. And then Deuteronomy 7:9 tells us, know therefore that the Lord your God is God. He is the faithful God, keeping his covenant of love to 1,000 generations of those who love him and keep his commandments. And so why do we trust? Because he's faithful. Why do we trust? Because he's powerful. Why do we trust? Because he loves us. Why do we trust? Because his purpose and plans are the best. And so, occasionally our most trustworthy fantasy players, they're going to have that rare bad game. Or maybe sometimes they get off to that slow start in the first half, and then we start to doubt and question them. Like, what's going on? And then all of a sudden in the second half, all right, multiple touchdowns. They finish the game strong. They lead our team to victory. And so, even the best fantasy players do let us down at some point. And unlike fantasy players, though, Jesus doesn't have a bad game. He's always worthy to be trusted. But sometimes things don't happen as quickly or exactly the way that we want them to. And so we start doubting. We go, what's going on? What's going on? And we lose our trust. You were kind of alluding to that. We start, our faith is in question. And we then look to other things to put our trust in, to put our faith in. And the truth is that he comes through for us and he works together for good. And so that's what we cling to. And so even in the midst of the doubting, we got to sort of recognize, okay, all right, I'm doubting here. My faith is being challenged. I'm questioning, but what is the character of God? And you mentioned the object of our faith. Okay, who is he? That's who we're trusting in. So that's the key thing to go back to.
I mean, that's really the critical point there, right? Is that sometimes I think we treat trust in Jesus, especially if we've been a Christian for a little while or we're fairly adept in sort of like Christian language and Christian thinking. We treat trust, increasing dependence on Jesus as a means to a certain end, right? And so because his ways are higher than our ways, because his plans and his purposes for our life and for the world are often mysterious to us, on a day-to-day basis, and even on a year-to-year basis sometimes in our life, it's not always going to be clear to us, Jesus, what are you up to? What are you trying to do in my life? What are you trying to do in the world? This feels painful. This feels confusing. This feels uncertain. And so we say, we can do sort of this transactional thing where we say, Jesus, I'll trust you more if you'll give me what I want.
That's right.
But what if what he wants for you is simply to trust him more, to depend on him more? And it would actually be unloving of Jesus to say, okay, I'll play that little transaction game with me. If you give me a little bit of extra faith today, I'll give you kind of the bonuses that you desire. Sometimes I think he makes us wait and even leads us through suffering, even leads us through the valley to teach us to depend on him more. And so you're naming something really crucial there, Bryce, which is that on a day-to-day basis, on a week-to-week basis, sometimes on a year-to-year basis, we don't understand what he's up to. And in those moments, we are allowed to express our doubt. Actually, I can't remember exactly how you just said it, but the question, what are you up to? Like, what are you doing here? That's a great question to ask Jesus. But are you asking that question from a place of criticism and irreverence, or are you asking it from a place of real curiosity and dependence? There are so many people in the Bible who say, Lord, I don't understand what you're up to, and this hurts, and this is hard. And God almost always responds to those people with sort of gentleness and with nearness. Oh, yeah. Whereas people that are saying, Jesus, what are you doing?
Yeah.
What they really
you
mean
owe
is,
me.
You don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
You owe me something. You couldn't possibly bring good out of this situation.
I know better than you.
I know better than you. Exactly right. Which goes all the way back to the first sin of Adam and Eve. You can be God without God. And Jesus is saying, do you really depend on me? Do you really trust me? And so I think, it's important to remember. And on a day-to-day basis, do we have some of those specific kind of practical litmus tests for what does it actually look like for me to trust Jesus today? I think that's a really important practical question for us to ask, and maybe for people who are listening to talk to their leagues about what does trusting Jesus versus not trusting Jesus on a random Thursday look like for you? What does that mean for you? And it's going to be different for every person, but that's the kind of thing we should be talking about brothers and sisters in Christ with.
Absolutely. And part of that question too is, okay, do you trust God? Okay, you don't trust God. Then what are you trusting?
Mhm.
Then who?
Something,
Then,
right,
then
yeah.
who are you trusting in? And what are you trusting in? And so, is it ourselves? Is it money? Is it success? Is it sports, relationships, material things? Because we know this. They will let us down. They're going to let us down. And so if we have a quote unquote starting lineup of those things, we might win for a week or have some fun for a while, but in the end, they are unworthy of our trust. And so they are substitutes, and they're not meant to do what only God can do. And I'll even think of this comparison from a fantasy standpoint. Like Darnell Mooney, a nice substitute for Drake London. Nope, no, he wasn't. Not this past week, he wasn't. And maybe for a week, he was fine.
Mm-hmm.
But in the end,
good.
he's not Drake London.
Right, yeah.
Drake London's the trustworthy wide receiver. That guy's when healthy, he's great. And so we do that too. It's like, oh, nice. I'm trusting in money. I feel good. I got enough money in the bank, so now I'm good. Well, what happens when that money goes away and stuff happens? Right. And all of that, then wait, okay, I can't really trust in this anymore. And so that's why the encouragement for us today is God is worthy of our trust. And so do we trust him more than anything else? And so even in the questioning, let's turn to him, and he'll reveal himself to us and confirm and affirm his love, his power, his grace. And that's what we trust in. Because his promises are true. His character is perfect. And so he's the one that can save us from sin, give us eternal life. And so we can trust him day to day. And so in John 15:4, Jesus says, remain in me and I will remain in you. Just as no branch can bear fruit by itself without remaining in the vine, neither can you bear fruit, producing evidence of your faith, unless you remain in me. And so if we start chasing all these other things, start trusting in all these other things and trying to find, satisfaction in other things, and we can't do anything apart from him. And so let's remain in him. Let's trust in him. And then Isaiah 26:4, trust in the Lord forever, for the Lord himself is the rock eternal. The rock eternal. That's who we're trusting in. And so he's a must start. He's a lineup lock. That's who we trust in. Any final thoughts, Trip?
I love that, man. I mean, for me, it's like clearly money is one of the most practical sort of like, where do you put your money? How do you feel when that number starts to go down in your bank account? It's one of the most practical places that indicates where our trust is. For me, I think one thing that I see in my life a lot is prayer, right? Or prayerlessness is often an indicator of my trust. I mean, I just think that verse that you just read from John 15, it's important to remember that whole discourse about the vine and the branches, it funnels right into Jesus' high priestly prayer in the upper room in John 17, where Jesus is praying, and he's making specific requests, right? But most of all, he's just praying, God, would you be near me? And would I be near you? And would they be one with us? And could we be together, right? I think so often when I'm not trusting the Lord, what my prayer life looks like is a quick kind of, I throw up a prayer, God, would you give me the strength today to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish, right? Versus when I'm trusting the Lord a little bit more, it's usually a little bit slowed down. My shoulders relax a little bit. And I'm saying, Lord, help me to see what you want to do today. Help me to see what you want to do in my life. And so that's another really practical indicator of trust for me as well. I mean, I think one of the Bible gives us Sabbath as one of those things as well, right?
Do we trust him?
Do we trust him enough to just stop working for one day out of the week? And you think, well, no, we couldn't possibly do that. You go all the way back to beginning of Sabbath in the Old Testament. And what did God's people, the Israelites, say when he told them to observe a Sabbath? He said, well, we couldn't possibly take 1 week off. Think about how behind we'll get and everything. And he said, no, I will take care of you if you trust me enough to rest this one day. And so another indicator in my life of like, am I trusting the Lord is there any point in my week where I'm just kind of turning things off and just resting? And so, it's just for every one of our listeners, I just want to challenge you, think about what are those practical indicators in your life? And what you can't do is say, I got to trust God harder. What you actually have to do is to name the unbelief. Say, Lord, I don't really trust you enough to rest on Sunday. I don't really trust you enough to devote time to prayer at the beginning of each day, but I want to trust you. I desire to trust you. Would you stir that up in me? Would you bring that about in me? And I think he really answers that prayer. He'll really answer that prayer for us as we ask him.
It's good. It's good. And it's identifying, okay, I'm worrying, I'm anxious, I'm angry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so then where's my trust? So that's a sort of a symptom, and go, all right, whoa, I gotta recalibrate here. And I'm in the throes of this right now, because as a nonprofit ministry, we are raising money. It is year-end fundraising. Today is Giving Tuesday, and I have to trust God to provide, that he's going to put it on people's hearts to give. I can't make people give. I can't reach in their heart and say, give. I can't manipulate people. So I have to trust God to provide for our ministry. And for 12 years, he's done it. And so I have to trust, but I have to trust him again. It's another December, and I'm being challenged and tested again. Do I trust him? And yesterday I was starting to panic because I don't have any, I do now, but I didn't have any. I had one lunch meeting scheduled, like a donor meeting. And it's like, oh no, how am I going to schedule enough meetings to raise enough money before Christmas break, before the end of the year? And so now all of a sudden I start panicking and so, whoa, do I trust God? Do I trust God? I gotta take responsibility and be led by him, but I have to trust him. And so what is that for you? Where are you getting worked up? And you got to catch yourself and go, whoa. I'm not trusting God here. I'm trusting in myself, that it's going to be based on what I can do. So let's remain in him. Let's trust him. Let's turn to him. And again, he's the rock eternal. And as Ernie Johnson from TNT, and now he's on ESPN, but the best inside the NBA, he's the man. His saying, trust God, period. So good. That quote always sticks with me and popped in my head. And then also I'm reminded of this wonderful theologian who in his senior yearbook put, when in doubt, trust God. And that was me.
Nice. I like that.
It's pretty good.
Did you sign all of the yearbooks that way?
Well, no, that was my quote. Like the senior
that was
quote,
your quote. Okay,
say.
nice. Okay, good one.
I know and I don't think I thought enough about it then. I thought, this sounds good. If you really think about it, it's like, when in doubt, trust God. There's some layers to that.
That's even a little gift of God through your faith to future Bryce. When you find that yearbook and open it back up and be like, did I really mean this thing?
That's right.
I understand it even more now than I did all those years ago, right? And you don't know that's happening to some of your classmates who are coming across that as well. I thought you meant like you were signing your, like I was just busy, like Hags, Lilas. But I thought you were signing all of your like yearbooks with like, when in doubt, trust God. But no, I like that as your senior quote. That's good. That's good.
I need to sign my name that way now. When I sign autographs.
Right. Trust God.
I'm kidding.
That's good. Yeah.
All the fantasy,
the people getting them to sign their Unpacking It polos. Yeah,
that's right. Or their fantasy. We need like a fantasy lineup card or something. Sign that. So anyway, there you go. That's we are way off track, but
not that far off track.
That's
just a little off track.
That's this week's breakout. Who do you trust more? What do you trust more? And hopefully you have a great conversation with your league about this topic. And so this is this week's breakout here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast. And with a few minutes left here on the show today, we've got more to get to. And I think we got to do some would you rather, because this time of year we are asking lots of questions. Lineup decisions are on the table, and let's play a little would you rather.
Get in on this.
Would you rather?
That sounds good. I'll have that.
It's a good time. You know what I mean?
This is Would You Rather.
I'm psyched.
Here's the first one. Would you rather, just in general, have running backs or wide receivers in the flex spot? Now, we're looking at running back and a wide receiver. They're similarly ranked and, they're projected similar points, and you've got to make a decision. Do you lean running back or wide receiver at the flex spot?
In the flex spot, my answer is going to be wide receiver. Reason being that I think, in general, running back is always a more top-heavy position, right? If you've got one of those like sort of 12 to 15 top RBs that you can just feel really good about trusting, chances are they're in your RB starting slots. Whereas I'm more confident in my ability to find a receiver that I can throw into flex that I'm just hoping is going to get me like 10 to 12 points. Now, obviously, if I've got 4 running backs on my roster who I'm all I'm pretty confident they can all get me double-digit points. That's a really good feeling. But most of the time I find at this time of year, more often I'm tossing a receiver into my flex spot. If you're working the waiver wire and finding handcuffs really well, that can be a great way to make running backs work. But you see, this is going to show both of our biases because you're more of a running back guy. I'm more of a receiver guy. I think the running back preference really helped you last season. I kind of think the receiver preference is really helping me this season. So it feels like it sort of is almost seasonal in terms of like which one is panning out. But give me your argument for running backs, because I already know that's the argument you're going to make.
So if I'm looking at a guy, and you're looking at rankings, projections, you're looking at a number of different things, and they're very similar. It's a wide receiver or a running back. I trust that a running back has a better chance of hitting those projections than a wide receiver does, because they're guaranteed touches.
Right.
Receivers are never guaranteed because you have to run the ball or you're catching the ball out of the backfield. So if I have an option to have a starting running back, I want him in there versus a third wide receiver or a second wide receiver on a team. If I've got another running back that's a key part of the offense, I'm putting him in my flex this time of year, especially. Starts getting cold. You want to run the ball more.
Yeah.
And especially for, teams that are with a lead, we'll see some more blowouts this time of year too, as teams are giving up a little bit. You want the running backs because they're gonna grind out the win. So there you go. We both can be right, but
no, I think you're probably right. I'm trying to figure out what it is. I guess it's more of a floor ceiling type situation. If I know that I'm the 6th seed and I'm coming up against the 1 seed and I need somebody to just catch a long touchdown, then maybe that's why I tend to say wide receivers in this. But yeah, you're someone who's had a lot of success with like a solid core of running backs in the whole time that I've been playing fantasy with you. So yeah, there might be something to that I need to reevaluate. I think it entails that you have worked the waiver wire really well, especially as running back injuries have popped up. And so you rightly said, I think you're going to continue to be able to start Kamani Vidal even when Omarion Hampton comes back. You can throw Tyler Algier into a flex spot and expect like 8 to 12 points from him on any given week. And so there is something there in terms of the stability of that floor. Yeah, I just always find myself like, I'm just going to swing for the fences, but maybe that's just my bias towards like big wide receiver plays. So
yeah, but then gosh, some of these guys just get taken out and they score 4 points.
Right.
So
you're
it's tough.
In big trouble. Yeah.
And it just seems like running backs are more likely to get the garbage touchdown.
Mm-hmm.
The 1 yard touchdown. Like they're going to get it unless you have a quarterback that sneaks it in. But so anyway, I just like those chances. We're playing the odds at this point. That's part of fantasy. What has a better chance of happening? Okay, here's an interesting one. And this is actually a dilemma that I face. Would you rather start Matthew Stafford or Joe Burrow this week and moving forward?
I haven't looked at their schedule, but that's going to be schedule based for me. I would say I consider those guys to be almost equivalent from a fantasy perspective right now. If we see one more week from Burrow, like if he does in week 14 what he did in week 13, I might be inclined to start him. But yeah, that all comes down to who are the teams that they're playing. I haven't even looked to see who the Rams are playing in the playoffs. I have some idea that I know the Bengals are playing the Ravens again in week 15. So that, in spite of what they did this past week against the Ravens, doesn't feel like an ideal. Rams have Detroit, Seattle, Atlanta. Seattle's still a tough defense, but maybe for how reliable Stafford has been over the course of the season, I might slightly lean towards Matt Stafford.
I think I'm going to be loyal to Stafford until further notice.
It's just
he's got me this far. I clinched first place and a bye,
right.
Actually. So in one league, I do have a bye week. And I'm benefiting from it. So how about that?
There's something to that stability. I will say it seems to be a pattern of the Bengals to really botch the beginning of their season, and they are not technically eliminated from playoff contention in the real NFL yet. And so I do think that Burrow is going to be playing with his hair on fire.
Yeah.
And then you remember, he's throwing to Jamar Chase, to T. Higgins, even dumping down to Chase Brown. And I do think probably the ceiling is higher with Burrow. But again, if you just want that steady floor, Stafford has not let you down all season long.
No, he's been great.
Except against the elite Carolina
Panthers baby.
This past week. But
keep pounding. Yeah. Let's go. All right, last one. Would you rather Packers wide receivers have none of them, or would you rather have Matthew Golden, Christian Watson, Dontavian Wicks, who just had 2 touchdowns, Romeo Doubs and his big helmet, Jaden Reed, who might come back? I mean, those are 5 potential wide receivers would you rather have any of them?
I mean, I think the right answer here, well, assuming that I can't say none of them, which is the cop out.
I'm just going to say none of them.
I'm not going to cop out.
That's
I'm going to
answer.
say that I have to play one of these guys in like my third receiver spot. I think the right answer might actually be Christian Watson. Okay. Reason being, from all reports are that he's fully healthy right now, that he's fully recovered from his long history of injuries. And I believe that over the past 2 weeks, he has gotten a 36% and a 37% target share for them at wide receiver. So he seems to be the guy that they're treating like their alpha. Dontavian Wicks had the big game with the multiple touchdowns.
He's a boomer bust.
The answer is definitely not Matthew Golden. Sadly, as someone who is a Golden believer, he just seems to stink. And Dontavian Wicks is boom or bust. I'm not going to believe it with Jaden Reed until I see it.
And then it'll be too late.
I think the answer might be Watson if I have to start one of these guys. And he's had a pretty good little stretch of games since he has come back from being fully healthy after that injury that he had. So Watson could be another one of these guys that we're talking about in that sneaky category of like a strong playoff performer that puts some teams over the top.
I think Watson's the answer. It's probably, in some ways, it's the obvious answer.
If you can say none of them.
But yeah, but in some ways, it's like, okay, if all these guys do come back, what does that do to Watson? And now all of a sudden, one guy has a big week and the next guy has a big week, and you're trying to guess. It's sort of a nightmare. Sure,
but don't forget what Christian Watson was before this terrible kind of injury stretch that he had. When he came in, he was being viewed as an elite wide receiver that was going to be the Packers alpha for the foreseeable future, and then he just had all this terrible hamstring and knee stuff. If he's healthy, I think that they still view him that way as a top wide receiver. So you feel okay about him, I think.
All right, last thing today. There are a couple guys we got to throw out there, waiver wire, and we're going to ask the question, who is that?
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
It's Mark Wahlberg. So I want to start the Cowboys lighting it up. Their offense is tremendous. CD bounced back. If you doubted him, silly you. I almost did. I almost thought about trading him, and then I got, no, I think he might bounce back. So I held on to him. So that's good. And there is a running back, though, Malik Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Has he become their backup running back to Javonte Williams? He had 3 carries for 47 yards. That's right, Malik Davis.
Come on, seriously, who is that? Come on, are you going to tell me who that is?
What do you think?
You got to pick him up. Yeah.
You think so?
I mean, before there was Jaden Blue, before there was Rico Dowdle, he was a guy who was talked about in some of like these deep fantasy league communities as somebody who could emerge as like their preferred running back post Ezekiel Elliott. And then I don't know what his journey has been since
he's been released like 47 times.
He's this like practice squad release comeback sort of guy, but he's a guy, he should be on somebody's roster. Especially in case something happens to Javonte Williams. You're probably not starting him with a lot of confidence, but you should pick him up if he's out there.
All right, you mentioned this name earlier, but I'll mention him again. 15 targets in 2 weeks. Last week, 8 catches, 93 yards, and a touchdown against Miami. Devon Vele.
Come on, are you going to tell me who that is? Come on, seriously, who is that?
Devon Vele, traded from the Broncos. I heard it during the broadcast. They said it funny.
It's definitely Vele. Yeah,
Vele, right?
Guys get it.
I heard it wrong. I think you're off on that one. But,
yeah, it's definitely Devon Vele. He's a guy that we liked in stretches last year.
With Denver.
Yeah, I just think, gosh, you could throw him in there if you're desperate.
A little more of a desperate.
Yeah, I'm looking at their schedule. They play the Panthers in week 15 of the playoffs, which is not a good, is proving to not be a great matchup for like fantasy wide receivers. But then they have the New York Jets, who are not what they used to be after all their trades at the trade deadline. And then they get to play Tennessee in week 17. So you could do worse than like your back is against the wall and you throw Vele in there in your second flex spot against the Tennessee Titans in week 17. So he's a guy to pay attention to, maybe to have on your roster. But I'd much rather have Adonai Mitchell than Devon Vele. If we're talking about potential waiver wire receiver candidates, Mitchell's the one to go after. It doesn't look like Garrett Wilson's coming back this season. So Adonai could be a sneaky waiver ad here.
So I was going to admit this earlier, but I went John Mechie instead of Adonai Mitchell.
I think Adonai Mitchell is better. I think he's better.
I just don't trust him. He's after the drop touchdown, I wrote him off.
Right, and that got him in trouble.
And so did Indy.
Right, that got him in trouble.
Get out of town.
But
Get out of here.
He was stuck behind Josh Downs, between Alec Pierce, who is proving to be a really, really good NFL receiver. But Adonai Mitchell, there was a lot of hype about him coming into the NFL, and this is only his second season. So I would say he might actually be, if Garrett Wilson doesn't come back, like a strong, like low-end wide receiver too with the Jets down the stretch, because Tyrod Taylor is playing quarterback now. Although, is Tyrod hurt? I don't think so.
I think he's okay.
Yeah, he's okay. So as long as Tyrod's at quarterback, I think Adonai Mitchell is a guy that you could start with some degree of confidence here in these last few weeks of the season.
With the number of bye weeks, quarterbacks going out, Brock Purdy, my boy Drake May, we're looking at the waiver wire for QBs. And in some leagues, I didn't carry 2 quarterbacks. So I just picked up Tua Tagovailoa last week. I taught my 6-year-old daughter how to say Tua Tagovailoa. So that's fun. That's always fun to say. But anyway, so he's my guy. Do you trust him this week, though? Am I going to start him? I picked him up in sort of a pre-waiver wire ad, or when I actually needed him.
I mean, I'm sitting here looking at my home league and the quarterbacks that are available. I mean, probably you have to start Tua there. I mean, desperate times call for desperate measures. The Miami offense is still capable of being prolific. I want to ask you, would you rather start, if you had to choose one of these guys for, let's say, the next 2 weeks, Tua, who is the CJ Stroud, or Marcus Mariota?
Stroud. I'm a Stroud guy.
You're a Stroud guy. Stroud has been the worst of the 3, has he not? And I mean,
he started coming around though.
Mariota, all of a sudden, in the last few weeks, he's scoring high teens to low 20s points. I don't think that Jaden Daniels is coming back yet.
He might though. I don't want Mariota.
They do have a tough schedule coming up too. So you're going to go with Stroud over Tua, man.
Nico,
I would feel
Jaden
sick.
Higgins.
If I had to make that decision, I would feel terrible. As someone who's kind of sitting there looking at the bad couple of weeks that Sam Darnold has had the past few weeks and trying to figure out, is there any quarterback that I could add that I would feel better about than Darnold? Man, I would feel terrible if I was thinking about like Stroud, Tua, Mariota. Gosh, it's rough. It's rough out there in the QB streets.
It is.
Yeah, I think you play Tua and just hope he has one of his good games.
Gosh, yeah. We'll see. I think I've already clinched a playoff spot. So
these are the decisions you're making at this time of year.
It's seeding this week. Come on, Tua. I need one game out of you. All right. Well, there you go. That's this week's Fantasy Football Fellowship podcast episode and Trip. Enjoyed it. We might miss you next week, but thanks for all your insight.
Do everything I can to be with you as we prepare to enter the playoffs.
That's right. Yeah, next week we'll be talking fantasy playoffs, so it should be fun. Hopefully your teams are entering in the playoffs. We'll discuss next week. For Trip, I'm Bryce. I'm a fantasy manager who follows Jesus. I believe in the good news that he died on the cross for my sin. He was resurrected, and through faith, I've been saved by his grace. I hope that is true for you as well, and I hope you'll join me as we live life as sports fans and fantasy managers who follow Jesus together. Have a great rest of your day. Good luck. Week 14. Have fun. We'll talk to you next time right here on the Fantasy Football Fellowship Podcast.